It all began on an ordinary Thursday afternoon, the kind of day that passes without leaving a trace. The sun was slipping behind a haze of clouds, and the air smelled faintly of rain. Amelia sat by the window of a quiet cafe, fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup, lost in thought. She'd been coming there for weeks, using the soft hum of chatter as a shield from her own silence. Then, the door opened, and she walked in. Her name was Riley. She had short auburn hair that curled just above her jawline, freckles sprinkled across her cheeks, and a confidence that seemed to enter the room before she did. She looked around, scanning for a seat, and their eyes met, just for a second, but long enough for something to shift inside Amelia. Riley smiled, the kind of smile that asks for nothing yet gives everything. By some unspoken pull, Riley walked over. "Mind if I sit here?" she asked, motioning to the empty chair across the table. Amelia nodded, trying to sound casual but feeling her heartbeat echo in her throat. "Sure," she said softly. They talked, about coffee, about books, about how the world sometimes feels too loud. There was laughter, gentle teasing, and that strange familiarity that comes when two souls recognize each other before their minds can catch up. Riley's voice had warmth, her gaze lingered just a second too long. And when their hands brushed while reaching for the sugar jar, it sent a spark up Amelia's spine. Time folded. Hours slipped by unnoticed. When Riley finally stood to leave, she touched Amelia's wrist lightly and said, "Same time tomorrow?" Amelia nodded, her lips curving into a quiet smile. For the first time in a long while, the world outside felt alive again. That night, Amelia lay awake replaying every moment, Riley's laughter, her eyes, that electric touch. She didn't know what this was or where it might lead, but she knew she wanted to find out. The next day arrived with the soft glow of morning sunlight spilling across Amelia's floor. She told herself she wouldn't get too excited, that maybe Riley wouldn't even show up, but her heart didn't listen. Every tick of the clock drew her closer to that small cafe, and when she finally walked in, Riley was already there, waiting by the window. "Hey, stranger," Riley said, smiling with that same mischievous glint in her eyes. Amelia's nerves melted. It felt natural, like picking up a conversation that had never really ended. They talked again, this time about everything and nothing. Riley was an artist, she painted emotions instead of scenes. Amelia was a writer who collected people's stories like seashells. Their dreams intertwined, color and words, emotion and meaning. Riley sketched on napkins while Amelia watched, her fingers idly tracing the edge of her cup. It was the kind of connection that wasn't loud, but deep, the kind that hums quietly under the skin. As the sky outside shifted to golden violet, Riley leaned closer. "You've got that look again," she murmured. "What look?" Amelia asked, feigning confusion. "The one where you're writing stories in your head," Riley said softly. "Tell me, am I one of them?" Amelia blushed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe the main one." For a moment, the world stood still. The hum of the cafe faded, leaving only the sound of their breath and the space between them, small enough to close, big enough to ache. Riley's hand reached out, fingers brushing Amelia's cheek in a touch so light it felt like a secret. "You're different," Riley said. "I don't usually let people in this fast." "Maybe it's because we don't have to try," Amelia replied. They left together as evening settled. The streets shimmered from a passing drizzle, and their reflections walked side by side in the puddles. Riley held an umbrella, and Amelia tucked close beneath it, their shoulders brushing with every step. The air carried the faint scent of rain and something sweeter, something new. When they reached Amelia's street, neither wanted to say goodbye. Riley hesitated, her gaze searching Amelia's face. "Tomorrow?" she asked. Amelia smiled, eyes glowing under the streetlight. "Tomorrow." And as Riley turned to leave, Amelia whispered into the quiet, "Maybe forever." The third meeting didn't feel like coincidence anymore. It felt like fate had a schedule. The cafe had become their place, their world of soft glances, unspoken words, and growing tension that neither dared to name. When Amelia walked in that afternoon, Riley was sketching again, a woman with long, flowing hair, eyes half closed in thought. Amelia recognized herself in the strokes of graphite. "Is that me?" she asked, pretending to sound surprised. Riley smiled, her voice playful but warm. "Maybe. I draw what stays in my mind." Amelia's heart fluttered. "Then I must live there rent-free." Riley laughed, a sound so genuine it filled the space between them. But there was something new in her gaze, something that flickered between boldness and vulnerability. The kind of look that asks for permission without words. They decided to leave the cafe early that day and walk along the river. The sun was slipping toward the horizon, scattering gold across the water. Riley walked a little closer, their hands brushing once, then again, until Amelia finally laced her fingers through Riley's. The world seemed to quiet down. There was no rush, no noise, just the gentle rhythm of their joined hands swinging between them. They stopped by a bench overlooking the water. The air smelled of jasmine and dusk. Riley turned toward Amelia, her thumb tracing slow circles over Amelia's hand. "You know," she said softly, "I didn't expect this." "You feel familiar." Amelia's voice trembled. "Maybe we've met before, in a dream." Riley smiled, her eyes shimmering like sunlight on ripples. "Then this must be the part where we stop pretending." Amelia didn't reply. She didn't need to. She simply leaned closer, heart pounding so loud she was sure Riley could hear it. The space between them shrank until there was nothing left but breath and warmth. And then, it happened. Their lips met. Softly at first, like a secret being shared. The kiss deepened, slow and tender, tasting of rain and quiet longing. It wasn't rushed, it was a conversation in silence, a promise made without words. Amelia felt her knees weaken as Riley's hands found her face, fingers gentle and sure. Time unraveled, seconds melted into something infinite. When they finally parted, both were breathless, their foreheads resting together. Riley whispered, "I've never felt something this real." Amelia smiled, eyes closed. "That's because it is." The night wrapped around them, cool and comforting. They didn't speak for a while, they just sat there, fingers intertwined, knowing something had shifted forever. That kiss wasn't just the beginning of love, it was the end of loneliness. The days that followed were a blur of messages, laughter, and stolen moments. It was as if the world had shifted to make space for the two of them. Riley would leave small sketches tucked into Amelia's notebook, tiny hearts, faces, and once, a simple drawing of two hands holding. Amelia, in turn, would write short lines of poetry on napkins and slide them across the table like secret love letters. But love, even in its sweetness, has its quiet storms. One evening, they met at the cafe again. The rain was pouring hard, drumming softly against the windows. Riley looked different that night. She smiled, but there was something in her eyes, a distance, a hesitation Amelia couldn't quite name. "Is everything okay?" Amelia asked gently. Riley nodded, then shook her head. "I don't know," she admitted. "I'm just scared." "Of what?" "Of this," Riley whispered. "Of feeling too much. Of you." The words hit softly, yet deep. Amelia reached across the table, brushing her fingertips against Riley's. "You don't have to be afraid," she said. "I'm not here to hurt you." Riley looked down, her voice trembling. "It's not that. I've been hurt before, by someone who said the same thing." She left when it got too real. Amelia's chest tightened. She moved around the table and sat beside Riley instead of across from her. "I'm not her," she said softly. "I don't run when it's real." For a moment, Riley didn't speak. Then she turned, eyes glassy, and exhaled shakily. "You make me want to believe that." Amelia lifted Riley's chin gently, their eyes meeting in the soft cafe light. "Then believe it." Riley leaned into her, resting her head on Amelia's shoulder. The world outside blurred into streaks of rain and light. They sat like that, quiet, close, and safe. After a while, Riley whispered, "I've spent so long pretending to be okay. But when I'm with you, I don't have to pretend." Amelia kissed the top of her head, her voice barely a murmur. "Then don't. Just be." They stayed long after the cafe closed, talking in hushed voices, sharing pieces of their lives, fears, dreams, the moments that shaped them. For every confession, there was understanding, for every silence, there was comfort. When they finally stepped out into the night, the rain had stopped. The air was clean and cool, and the city lights shimmered like tiny promises. Riley took Amelia's hand and whispered, "Thank you, for staying." Amelia squeezed her fingers. "Always." And in that word, always, something sacred began to take root. Love rarely moves in straight lines. It twists, bends, and sometimes breaks before it rebuilds. For Amelia and Riley, the first few weeks were pure light, morning coffees, long walks, hands brushing in crowded streets, laughter echoing between them. They had grown so comfortable in each other's presence that the world outside began to fade. But the deeper they fell, the more their fears began to whisper. Riley had always been the kind to disappear when things got heavy. Her art had taught her to live in bursts, passionate, fleeting, safe within her own control. But Amelia was different. She wasn't just a spark, she was warmth, steady and grounding. And that terrified Riley. One evening, Amelia showed up at the cafe, her heart fluttering with the excitement of seeing her again. But Riley wasn't there. Hours passed, the coffee went cold, and worry settled like a weight in Amelia's chest. She called. No answer. She texted. Nothing. 3 days went by before Riley finally appeared at her door, soaked in rain, her eyes red from crying. Amelia's heart ached at the sight. "Where were you?" she whispered, her voice trembling with hurt. Riley hesitated. "I needed space. I panicked." "Panicked?" Amelia repeated softly. "About us?" Riley nodded. "About how real it's gotten. You see me, and I don't know how to handle that. I'm not used to being loved like this." Amelia's eyes softened, even as tears welled up. "You think I'm not scared too? But running doesn't make it easier." Riley's breath hitched. "I know. I don't want to break this." "Then stop trying to run from it," Amelia said gently, taking a step closer. "If you're afraid, let me be afraid with you." There was silence, thick, trembling silence. Riley looked up, tears glistening on her lashes. "I don't deserve you." Amelia reached out, cupping Riley's face in her hands. "You don't get to decide that," she whispered. "I choose you." Riley closed her eyes, leaning into the touch like she was coming home. "Then please," she murmured, voice cracking, "don't give up on me." Amelia pulled her into a tight embrace, the rain still dripping from Riley's hair onto her shoulder. "Never," she said. "I'd rather weather the storm with you than stand in the sun without you." They stayed like that for a long time, two hearts clinging through the chaos, learning that love isn't always perfect or easy. Sometimes it trembles, sometimes it aches, but it's in those moments it becomes real. When Riley finally lifted her head, her eyes met Amelia's with quiet strength. "You're my calm," she said. "And you're my wild," Amelia replied. That night, they didn't need words to heal, just closeness, breath sinking in the dark, warmth replacing the rain. The storm had come, but it hadn't washed them away. Morning light crept through the curtains, golden and soft. Riley stirred first, her head resting against Amelia's shoulder, the steady rhythm of her heartbeat grounding her in a peace she hadn't felt in years. The storm had passed, not just the one outside, but the one inside her. For the first time, she didn't wake up wanting to run. She woke up wanting to stay. Amelia opened her eyes slowly, a small smile curving her lips when she saw Riley watching her. "Good morning," she whispered. "Morning," Riley murmured, brushing a strand of hair from Amelia's face. "You stayed." "I told you," Amelia replied, eyes tender, "I always would." They lingered in the quiet, no rush, no fear, just the stillness of two souls finally in sync. Riley's hand traced slow patterns on Amelia's arm. "You make me feel like I'm allowed to exist exactly as I am," she said softly. "That's love," Amelia replied. "It doesn't ask you to change. It just asks you to be." Over the next few weeks, their lives fell into rhythm, messy, imperfect, but beautifully theirs. Mornings were filled with coffee and laughter, evenings with sketchbooks and words scattered across the table. Riley painted Amelia's eyes again and again, each time capturing something new: hope, trust, belonging. Amelia wrote stories inspired by Riley's smile, her voice, the way she saw beauty in broken things. One evening, they visited the river where they'd shared their first kiss. The water shimmered beneath a sunset sky, the air cool and full of memory. Riley stood quietly, then turned to Amelia. "I've been thinking," she said, voice steady, "about how love isn't a single moment, it's all the little ones we build after. The arguments, the laughter, the holding on even when it's hard." Amelia smiled softly. "So what are we building?" Riley took her hands, eyes glistening in the fading light. "Something that lasts." Their foreheads touched, and the world seemed to pause again, just like that first day, but now it meant more. Their love had been tested, cracked, and healed stronger than before. It wasn't a fairy tale, it was real, raw, and beautifully human. Amelia whispered, "You know, I used to write stories about love like this. But none of them ever felt right." "Why not?" Riley asked, smiling faintly. "Because I hadn't met you yet." Riley's breath caught, and for a moment, her eyes shimmered with tears she didn't try to hide. She leaned in, their lips meeting again, this time with a quiet certainty, not of discovery but of belonging. When they pulled away, Riley laughed softly. "So what happens next in your story?" Amelia grinned. "We keep writing it, one sunrise at a time." They stood there, wrapped in each other's arms as the world turned gold around them. Two girls, one love story. Not perfect, not simple, but theirs. And in that truth, they had found forever.